Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we're stepping way back in time to unravel the epic, multi-layered history of the Chauhan Dynasty. This isn't just a list of dates and names, it's a massive saga of medieval power, aggressive expansion, and an enduring legacy that literally shaped the very landscape of the Indian subcontinent. Let's dive right in.
We're talking about a dynasty supposedly forged in the fire pits of myth, yet one that fiercely ruled from the very real, rugged desert forts of Rajasthan. In this explainer, we're going to separate the sweeping, magical legends from the hard archaeological facts. But hey, before we get started, please take a quick second to like this explainer, share it with your fellow history buffs, and hit subscribe right off the bat so you never miss a deep dive with us.
All right, so here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with those mythological beginnings, pivot over to the actual archaeological evidence, trace their first major epicenter at Sambar, and then finally map out exactly how this royal lineage spread its branches across the region.
Starting off with Section 1, the Agnikund origin myth.
Okay, picture this. You're high up on Mount Abu. The great sage Vasista is trying to perform a sacred fire ritual, but demons, literal demons, keep swooping in and disrupting it. To protect the ceremony, the sage starts chanting these incredibly powerful mantras, and boom, he summons 4 magnificent warriors directly out of the flames. And one of those warriors, the first Chauhan. Now, for early rulers, origin myths exactly like this one were absolutely crucial. I mean, they were the ultimate political propaganda, giving them a literal divine mandate to rule.
This fiery genesis was actually cemented into the cultural memory by the 12th century text, the Prithviraj Raso, written by Chand Bardai. He writes, "To protect the yajna from demons, sage Vashista chanted mantras and brought forth 4 warriors from the flames, Parmar, Pratihar, Chalukya, and Chauhan. It painted these early Chauhans not just as everyday mortal kings, but as divine protectors, essentially forged to defend the sacred."
And you know, this wasn't just some fleeting fairy tale. Real heavy hitters in later royal courts enthusiastically backed this legendary origin. Prominent writers like Muhat Nadsi and Surya Mal Mizran totally supported the fire altar theory in their own historical texts. It was the accepted narrative.
However, playing the role of historical detectives today, we kind of have to pause here and ask the big question. What does the actual archaeological evidence say? If we strip away the poetry and the myth, what is literally written in stone?
Which brings us to Section 2, Inscriptions and the Brahmin Origins.
So, this is where the myth hits the solid stone. On one hand, you've got the divine, fiery birth of the Agnikund theory. But on the other, we have the historical Brahmin theory. And this one comes straight from the 1170 AD Bijolia Inscription. This is a physical stone record that explicitly calls a Chauhan king of Vatsa Gotra Brahmin. It's a completely different origin story, rooted in historical record rather than magic.
And since stone inscriptions carry immense weight in academic circles, this Brahmin origin has some serious scholarly muscle behind it. Esteemed historians, people like Dr. Dashrath Sharma, Dr. Gopinath Sharma, and Dr. Bhandarkar, they all point directly to that Bijolia inscription to solidify this timeline over the fire myth.
Hey, before we track down exactly where these early rulers first set up their kingdom, let's take a quick breather. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the Chauhan Dynasty so far, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps us bring more of these explainers right to your feed.
All right, moving on to Section 3, Sambar, the early center.
Let's actually look at the timeline we have on record. According to texts like Rajshekar's Prabhan Kosh, a ruler named Vasudev founded the Chauhan Dynasty way back in 551 AD, right around the Sambar region. Their very first capital was set up at Aich Chhatrapur, which, if you're looking at a modern map, is present-day Nagaur. And actually, jumping back to our trusty 1170 AD Bijolia inscription for a second, it records that Vasudev was directly responsible for the construction of the famous Sambar Lake, which is pretty incredible, right? It really shows that transition from just a newly founded kingdom to an establishment heavily shaping its local geography.
And finally, Section 4, the lineage spreads. So, as we just saw, the whole shebang kicked off with Vasudev and Sambar in 551 AD. But over the centuries, this family tree just exploded across the map. You have Ajay Raj founding Ajmer in 1113 AD. Fast forward a bit, and Kirtipal establishes the Jalore branch in 1181. And then, Govind Raj planted the flag for the legendary Ranthambore branch in 1194. It's like a giant puzzle of power spreading out over hundreds of years. Now, I really want to highlight that Ranthambore branch for a second, because it carries immense historical and literary weight. The founder there, Govindraj, was actually the son of the famous Prithviraj III. After a major dispute, he relocated to Ranthambore and laid the foundation for a branch that would eventually give us the epic, legendary tale of Hamirdev Chauhan. Hamirdev's sheer bravery, and honestly his stubborn resilience, became so famous that it sparked a massive literary legacy. He was memorialized forever in grand texts like Hamir Mahakavya by Nayan Chandrasuri and celebrated by the court poet Chandrasekhar in Hamir Hat.
So, as we look back at this wild journey, from a mythical fire pit at Mount Abu to these very real, very imposing desert forts in Ajmer, Jalore, and Ranthambore, we kind of have to wonder, right? How did the stark, unforgiving geography of Rajasthan's deserts and hills mold the survival and the fierce identities of these separate branches?
Well, geography doesn't just host history, it literally shapes it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer of the Chauhan Dynasty. If this journey from myth to stone changed how you view this era of history, please hit that like button, share this with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time as we uncover more of the past's greatest stories.